Larry Hall was every parent's worst nightmare. In the 1980s and 1990s, he prowled the Midwest preying on young women and girls, leaving a trail of terror and grief in his wake. Though he was only ever convicted of 2 murders, investigators believe Hall may have killed as many as 50 women before he was finally apprehended. Hall's first known victim was 15-year-old Tricia Reitler, who disappeared while walking home from visiting her boyfriend's grave at a local cemetery in Illinois in 1984. Her body was found strangled and sexually assaulted in the cemetery 3 days later. The crime shocked the small community where Reitler lived, and police were unable to find her killer. Over the next decade, young women continued to disappear across the Midwest. Authorities noted the similarities in the cases, all attractive young girls or women who vanished suddenly, only for their bodies to resurface later, showing signs of strangulation and sexual assault. It seemed a serial killer was prowling the region, yet police were unable to zero in on a suspect. Hall's violence escalated in 1987 when he attempted to kidnap and murder a 14-year-old girl in Indiana. The brave teenager fought back against her attacker and managed to escape, though she was gravely injured. Hall was arrested but later released on bail. The legal system had failed to recognize the immense threat Hall posed to society. In 1988, Hall's crimes caught up to him when he was arrested for the abduction and murder of 15-year-old Jessica Roach in Illinois. An eyewitness placed Hall with Roach shortly before she disappeared, and DNA evidence ultimately linked him to the sexual assault. After being convicted of Roach's murder in 1993, Hall confessed to several more slayings, including that of Tricia Reitler. But with no additional evidence, authorities were unable to charge him with the other crimes. Hall was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for Roach's murder. But behind bars, the authorities' full understanding of Hall's evil gradually came into focus. His former wife and acquaintances came forward revealing his obsession with the Civil War and Nazi imagery. A search of his van and farmhouse uncovered handcuffs, sexually explicit photos of underage girls, women's clothing and diaries filled with macabre fantasies. Though Hall had no formal medical diagnosis, experts characterized him as an organized predatory killer driven by sexual sadism and a desire for power over innocent victims. He trolled reenactment events and county fairs hunting for victims, focusing on vulnerable young women separated from their families. It is feared he may have killed up to 50 such women and girls in his decade of evil deeds across the region. For the family members of Hall's suspected victims, justice remains elusive even as the monster himself remains under lock and key. Tricia Reitler's mother, Nancy, provided DNA to authorities which confirms her daughter was one of Hall's many victims. But without his full confession, she continues to suffer without complete closure. Jessica Roach's mother, Mary, described Hall as pure evil, saying there is no punishment strong enough for him. Hall recanted his confessions shortly after making them, apparently reveling in the control he maintained over the fates of his victims. He taunted authorities and the victims' families by withdrawing his statements before additional charges could be filed. Due to American constitutional protections against double jeopardy, Hall will likely never be tried for the murders he confessed to. Authorities have linked Hall to over 20 disappearances and suspected murders spanning over a decade across the Midwest. While he was only ever convicted in the deaths of Tricia Reitler and Jessica Roach, investigators believe he is responsible for dozens more. The true victim count may never be fully known. Many of the missing women fit a profile, young, attractive, and on their own when they vanished. Their bodies, when found, showed signs of rape and strangulation perpetrated by an organized killer, but with little physical evidence in most of the cases and no way to credibly link Hall to the crimes after his confessions were recanted. Police have hit dead end after dead end, trying to provide closure for the victims' families. To the outside eye, Hall seemed to be living a harmless, if unusual, nomadic lifestyle. But in reality, Hall used these events as cover, while he hunted for victims to satisfy his sadistic appetites. After Hall's conviction for Jessica Roach's murder, authorities searched his isolated Indiana farmhouse looking for evidence. They hoped items found at the property might conclusively link Hall to other suspected victims. What they found only raised more questions about the twisted psyche of the man who had dwelled there. Inside the house, macabre shrines with candles, women's lingerie, and photos of underage girls indicated Hall's obsession with sexual violence and death. His extensive collection of true crime magazines detailing gruesome murders suggested he drew inspiration from other serial killers. Diaries and journals revealed Hall's demented fantasies about controlling and torturing women. One room contained an actual torture device with leather straps and chains. Outside, police dug extensively on the property searching for human remains, with mixed results. Some bone fragments found raised suspicions, but could not be conclusively tied to a victim. The house had apparently been Hall's dwelling of choice during most of the 1980s, before he took to the road as a drifter after 1990. The disturbing contents provided ample circumstantial evidence of Hall's involvement in multiple crimes. But with his confessions thrown out, physical evidence specifically tying him to a victim was needed. The House of Horrors held many clues, yet not the definitive answers investigators hoped for. They would need Hall himself to finally reveal the truth, something the killer seemed unlikely to ever relinquish. Out of the many girls and young women Hall victimized, only one is known to have fought him off and survived. In 1987, he attempted to abduct and murder a 14-year-old Indiana girl who courageously defied the odds and got away. Her brave escape likely saved her life while also eventually putting Hall behind bars. The survivor, who has kept her identity private, was walking home alone from her school bus stop when Hall attacked her. He dragged her into nearby woods where he handcuffed her ankles and tried to strangle her. In a 2018 interview, she described fearing she would die alone in the woods. But after briefly losing consciousness, she miraculously awoke and found an opportunity to escape. Flagging down a passing car, she survived though being severely injured. Now in her 40s, the survivor continues to deal with post-traumatic effects from her ordeal. She has become an advocate for victims of violent crimes and mentor for others who have endured trauma. Though unwilling to let the attack define her, she lives with the knowledge of how close she came to becoming another lost victim. Her stunning escape provided key evidence that eventually helped convict Hall once and for all. Thanks to her bravery and perseverance, his kidnapping and assault of her as a teen finally came back to haunt him in 2007. After a decades-long pursuit, justice was served as Hall received a 200-year sentence for this crime. The survivor was disappointed that sentence was to run concurrent with Hall's existing life term, but she said knowing Hall would remain imprisoned until death brought some peace of mind. Her courageous story serves as an inspiration that even in the face of true evil, hope and the will to survive can still prevail. Hall leaves a tragic legacy of pain across Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Nebraska, and beyond. The families of his nameless victims continue grasping at rumors trying to understand what he did. Meanwhile, Hall himself sits in prison, devoid of remorse or compassion. For him, each victim was an object serving his twisted desires, nothing more. Detectives who worked the cases warned that the true number of Hall's murders is likely even higher than estimated. His deception and manipulation mean the depth of his evil may never be fully mapped. But while Hall hides from the truth, the communities impacted by his crimes will continue seeking justice. By honoring the missing, they ensure these young women are not forgotten, even if they cannot yet rest in peace.